On the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine on this wet and rainy Tuesday. Nick Beres here. We have a good show on tap for you. If you don't have to head out this morning, don't. I was just commenting that it seems as though the traffic is worse today because of all of the heavy rain than it was during all the ice and snow we had over the past 2 to 3 weeks. Of course, far fewer people were out driving in those conditions. This morning, everyone's out and about, and it is wet. The word hydroplane hits home, so be careful because there's plenty of wrecks out there this morning. So, best thing to do, hang tight, join in the conversation. As I promoted and mentioned this morning, we're going to talk Social Security as always. You know, it's our annual, not annual, it's our regular show. We have our guests come on and talk about Social Security issues. Always busy. You know, it picks up at the halfway point around 8:30 or so. So let's jump in now. 737-7587. We're going to talk this morning with James Shanks from the administration. How are you?
Very well, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. You know, he even came straight here this morning.
I did.
Because you usually go by the office and get, you know, your stuff.
I go by the office usually about 6, do 3 hours worth of work in 15 minutes, and then come here. But see, that didn't get done today, Nick.
You were stuck in traffic.
That's right.
It's it's a bear out there, but he's got it all up here in the noggin. So any questions that you may have or the like, we'll get to it. And again, you know how this works. We can take your calls. A lot of you have to call sometimes. You get put on hold. You get through the operators. You don't have to do that here this morning. But the issues at hand, you know, SSI, the application process, do you need a lawyer, how much money you may want to plan for getting from Social Security. I always like to start the show a bit just off the top of your head. I know you look at stuff before you come on. Is there anything that you want to talk about, any deadlines for any reason for folks or new developments coming up right now that you want to throw out there?
A lot of people right now, Nick, it's the time of the year where IRMA applies.
Now, IRMA, I've heard, what is that? What is IRMA?
IRMA is the income-related monthly adjustment amount.
Okay.
In layman's terms, Medicare will look at your tax return 2 years prior.
Okay.
And if you reported a MAGI, which is your modified adjusted gross income, over a certain level, you pay more for your Medicare cost than the normal $104.90.
Okay.
So there's a premium added.
All right.
This is the time of year those letters go out. Our offices are flooded with those types of calls. I just want to let everybody know what it is. It's for high earners. Most people don't know this, but Medicare actually costs about $500 a month.
Okay.
Now, you only pay $104 a month. The government subsidizes the remainder. However, there's legislation that was passed long ago. If you're a high earner, which for this purpose, if you report over $85,000 as a single filer, they believe you should pay a greater percentage of that $500.
Okay.
So you'll get a premium of about $35. Now the premiums go up depending on how much you've made. So that's how that works, and we get a lot of phone calls this time of year about
what are they
that.
just asking you, okay, why is this, or just asking you to explain it like you just did? What is this all about?
Almost always it just comes down to an explanation.
Yeah.
The rules are very clear. Now if you've had a life-changing event, if something's happened, well, I lost my job or I got divorced, something like that, the agency will look at the adjustment and decide whether or not it should still apply to you. Now, the important thing to remember here, this isn't for life. We look at your tax return 2 years prior every year. So as your MAGI goes back down, so maybe 1 year when you retired, you took a bunch of money out of your 401k. The next year, you're not going to do that. So your MAGI is going to change, and then that premium will likely be removed. So a lot of people think, oh, no, this is for life, and it is not. It's only for 12 months.
Okay, and it'll be reevaluated each time around.
That's correct.
And if all of a sudden, okay, right, meaning that if all of a sudden there's not as much money, you'll pay a lower premium.
That's correct. That's correct. The other thing I wanted to mention.
Good.
The ABLE account. This was something we tried to talk about last time I was on the show, and I couldn't remember the name of it.
ABLE account.
It's called the ABLE. It's not the ABLE account yet, but it's legislation that's in Congress right now, and it has passed. We haven't gotten guidance on how it's going to be administered yet, but once we do, those rules will be forthcoming. But basically, it's going to allow people who receive SSI benefits to accumulate more than $2,000 worth of income and resources and not be penalized.
And not be penalized.
That's right.
Okay.
Current rules, you cannot have.
There's limits on
that's
how
right.
much.
$2,000 is the limit.
Okay.
Legislation was passed, was put forth by the president to allow people to save money while drawing disability and not be punished.
Okay.
So we'll see how that shakes out. You know, right now there's nothing's been formally announced. It's just one of those things coming down the pipe.
Good. Other than that, the same old siren song. If you can, go online, do your business online if you have access to a computer. I know not everyone does, but if you do, it's the best way to do it, right?
100%. 100%.
Go in there and check that out. We'll put the number out as well for you. And again, the Social Security offices, remind folks where they are.
120 Athens Way is the one in Metro Center. There's also one on 140 Coode Lane in Madison.
Okay.
There's an office on St. Patrick Court in Murfreesboro. And then there's another office in Gallatin. Those are the local offices.
Okay. And last question before we get to the phone lines, which are open. I promise we'll run through them till 9 o'clock. If someone has lost or misplaced their Social Security card, first of all, in your opinion, is it important to have it? I know the rule of thumb is do not carry your Social Security number in your wallet, which I don't. But, I mean, I can't remember the last time anyone has asked me to ever see that card. I get asked the number frequently. But the card, how important is it that you tangibly have a card somewhere? When would it come into play?
You need a card, and you need it in a safe at home. You do not need to carry your card. Okay. You will be asked for it if you want to file for a passport. If you go for employment, now is the law that your employer get a copy of your Social Security card. So that's how we get them most often. And then also children, when they enroll in school, often they're asked for a Social Security card. Right now, again, it's tax time. The IRS will often ask for proof of Social Security number if there's some kind of discrepancy on the record. They don't want just you to jot your number down on a piece of paper. You have to have the card. Other than that, your card is not to be used as ID. It's something the administration has been preaching since 1930. We all know the card is used as ID, unfortunately. Many employers have started doing that, and it just kind of caught on. But for the most part, there's no need for you to carry it on a daily basis. Just isn't.
And, well, the thing about it, using it for ID is, to me, I don't see how, because it's basically just a flimsy old card. It's not laminated like your driver's license. It sure as heck doesn't have your picture on it. It's just a number and your name, and anyone could grab that and say that's mine.
That's right. It does not have the security features that warrant a picture ID in
But
this
if you
country.
have lost your number, and I guess you made a good point why it's good to have one stashed away somewhere, and you don't have the card, you can go about getting a new one by...
You must file in person right now.
Go to the office, fill it out, say, look, I lost my card, can I get another one?
You must bring a picture ID that's unexpired.
Okay, you see that, and of course the new card you'll get will be the same number, correct? You're just copying off a new one. Your number, your Social Security number from the day you were born till the day you die stays the same.
Generally true. Now, if you have ID theft, things like that, the number can be changed, but it's rare circumstances. Usually in issues of domestic dispute and things like that, if there's abuse alleged, the card number can be changed. The agency will link the two numbers in order to make sure you get paid correctly, but it's pretty rare.
All right, let's get to a couple phone calls before we go to the first break, and the lines are open, 737-7587. We'll start off with Larry. Hi, Larry.
Good morning.
Good morning. How can we help you?
I would like to ask Social Security about payee. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. I have a nephew, I'm not going to call names or anything, that lives in Kentucky. He's 37 years old, but works on a mentality of about a 11 or 12-year-old. He draws Social Security disability due to a heart condition. He's a patient at a mental hospital in Kentucky. Lately, the last year, his parents have died, and I pretty much take care of him. He's coming into an inheritance from where his parents died. It's not a large amount, but it's a pretty good, lasting for a good several years. What the problem is he hasn't been able to pay his bills for the last year. The mental health department at the hospital where he goes suggested that we become his payee, my wife and I. We filled out the paperwork. The mental health department sent a letter to Social Security, and we became the payee. And before we got the first check, as usual, whenever you become somebody's payee or apply, they're generally very upset over it because they don't want to do it. Well, before we even got his first check, he went back to the Social Security Department in Kentucky, and they did a 5-minute interview and said he was qualified to be his own payee.
So really, the way you were able to become his payee by making the case that he's incompetent to attend to his own affairs.
Correct.
And so he challenged us. So what is your question, real quick, before we go to the break, and we'll see if we can answer it.
My question is, can they do that, and is there a way to appeal it?
Okay.
Decision?
Good question. Yeah, and that's always a tricky thing. Competence, this guy wants to control his own, but if what he tells us is accurate, I mean, how did they make that determination when he went in there? Did they have to evaluate him? Did a doctor look at him?
It is a tricky thing. We do take the opinions of doctors into consideration. However, ultimately, it is the agency's decision on who to pay. The agency's position overall is if we can pay you your benefit, we will do so. We only assign a payee if we decide that there is no way that you can be competent in handling your affairs and have money sent to you directly. We avoid payees when possible. All that being said, yes, the interview should have been conducted with him. He would have been asked a series of questions about how much his bills are, when he pays them, and competence was assessed. And then also taking into consideration often a doctor's consideration. We will write a doctor and say, do you believe they're competent based on their medical conditions? All that being said, if you do not believe the correct decision was made, yes, you can appeal the decision, return to the office, write a letter to them and say, I do not believe they should be their own payee. Here are the reasons why. Now, ultimately, the agency is going to take a wait and hold position, most likely, and see, after they get a first couple of checks, are they evicted? Are they going back into the office saying they spent all their money and they don't have any money for food? Things of that nature. Now, if the agency pays them their checks and all the bills get paid and things are fine, then they're going to continue to want them to be their payee because that's originally the way the law was written. We want people to receive money that's due them, if at all possible.
And understand, it's their independence, and this guy wanted it. So, okay, you have the option to appeal there, and I believe Larry's genuine in wanting to help him, meaning that I don't think Larry's after his checks, if you know what I mean, which, you know, some people are, unfortunately. But I think Larry's genuine here. So if you really are worried about him and maybe he doesn't know enough to protect himself, intervene, but ultimately you guys make the call. And I agree. I think the standard should be you do everything you can to allow that individual to maintain his independence. That's the way it always should be. But some people need help. All right, on that note, we'll take a break. If you're on hold, stay where you are. Sandra, David, Laquita, Lori, Pat, and others. And we do have some lines open if you want to jump in. More for the big guy right here. He's not going anywhere. He's chained to the chair. More questions about Social Security right after this. It's not really changed.